To our distinguished speakers, Mr. Charles Boama, Dr. Paul Akwa, Professor Bill Pupulampu, Dr. Kwesienin, and Mr. Kwadwo Adai-Mensah, all of whom I shall be introducing shortly. But if you can see, we have already put their bios on your tables. So please read them so we can save time on the introductions. But I just want to express a very special appreciation to Mr. Charles Boama, Senior Vice President, Africa Development Bank Group, who agreed to be here with us soon after last week's Africa Development Bank Group annual meeting in Korea, South Korea. Just let me make it clear. Not the rocket man. And it's a very major annual event for the bank group. Charles, I'd like to thank you especially for your time and sacrifice. But as you said to me, the theme for this year, Ghana in Search of Prosperity, has been a subject of great interest to you. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the objective of the Ishmael Yamson and Associate Business Roundtable is to provide a platform for Ghana's business executives, policymakers, policy implementers, and other stakeholders to discuss current and emerging issues that have potential implications for the economy of Ghana and their impact on our society generally. The Roundtable also provides opportunities to create common understanding of how these issues can be resolved to enhance the capacity of the country to grow, create jobs, and widespread prosperity, not only for the country and the citizens, but also for businesses which invest in this country. This year's theme, Ghana in Search of Prosperity, was purposely chosen. We have been on the journey to create widespread prosperity for our country, our citizens, and our businesses for a very long time. But we never seem to see any signs of real, lasting progress. Achieving widespread prosperity appears to have become a mirage, an elusive dream with considerable disappointment and frustration. And we are not even sure whether we know and appreciate what a successful end of this journey should look like, and what the costs and consequences of our failure to grow and create prosperity for our country and our citizens will be. That is why we believe it is time to deeply interrogate the obstacles to our efforts and why and how they should be confronted and resolved. Hence, the 5 thematic areas that I will be touching on today, namely governance, competitiveness, human capital development, social mobility, and security. Ghana's economy, like most of the economies of the continent of Africa, often seem like victims of divine whimsy. It is overly dependent on rain-fed agriculture, minerals, and oil. Thus, the Ghanaian economy remains factor-driven and deeply exposed to the vulnerabilities associated with commodity price instabilities. When prices are high, the economy booms, just like now, as the gods seem to be smiling on us, and the economy is recovering strongly. But therein lies Ghana's economic inflexibility and successive instability. Commodity price rises are never sustainable, but public finances have remained burdensome with high public sector wage bill, high interest payments on large and growing debts, while our pernicious politics continues to destroy value. These risk factors tend to make our economy unattractive for investors. Besides, there are world economic uncertainties fueled by distant trade wars and the strengthening of the US dollar, which may have implications for interest costs and inflation in the near term. All these issues which constrain Ghana's search for prosperity are very solid. But clearly, some of them are under our control. We can choose as a country to become competitive and thus become more attractive than our comparator countries, thereby attracting more investments into sectors with the capacity to create really well-paying jobs. We can also choose to diversify our economy and transform it away from a mere factor-driven economy dependent on crude, unprocessed raw materials to an economy driven by value-added manufacturing services and innovation. We can also choose to make our politics less pernicious and fight corruption aggressively. We can also choose to govern ourselves with integrity, transparency, accountability, and people-centered conscience, or continue to pursue a governance framework of selfishness, greed, and avarice, with all the serious national and personal security implications. And we can choose to use our teeming, highly aspirational youthful population and professionals as catalysts to drive economic growth and transformation, rather than leave them without hope and frustrated, thus making them a liability and risk to the economy. And as Dr. Kwame Nkrumah beautifully put it, we can also choose to become more visionary and create a future Ghana in which no one will have any anxiety about the basic needs of life, about work, food, and shelter, where poverty and illiteracy no longer exist, disease is brought under control, and where our educational facilities provide all the children of Ghana with the best possible opportunity for the development of their potentials. If we resolve to deal purposefully with these factors which are under our control, we can confront the external factors of commodity price variabilities and world economic uncertainties with greater success. Our life and our future are therefore in our own hands. Today, there's a good feeling that we are making progress. And indeed, it is true. Last week's monetary policy report indicated that all the macro indicators are trending positively. Inflation is being subdued, interest rates are coming down, the CD has relatively stabilized, even if we have seen some depreciation in recent weeks, while business and consumer confidence were reported to be on the rise. Very comforting indeed. And you all heard that our finance minister was voted the best finance minister in Africa for 2018. That's a big acknowledgement of the work they are doing. However, I'm old enough to know that macro stability does not in itself deliver growth and prosperity. It only provides the environment, the time and space for economic actors to take investment decisions. My experience is that as a country, we have not been good at sustaining macro stability beyond our 4-year political election cycles. So we need to make a more determined effort to depart from what seems to have become a structural impediment to our search for prosperity. And there are other hurdles as well. It is a matter of concern, for instance, that revenue generation remains weak. And when government makes every effort to plug the leakages, we have many organizations and groups with vested interest who will oppose it, and they oppose it with viciousness. And we need to make sure that we all support initiatives to plug the revenue leakages. If we don't do that, we must remember that we have already front-loaded many recurrent expenditure programs with serious fiscal implications for the short term, the medium term, and the long term. So we must not allow these groups with vested interest to stop government from plugging the leakages. We also know that corruption has become institutionalized and pervasive, and we should not underestimate its destructive impact and implications for our economy. It is a major issue, and sometimes it is worrying that matters of corruption are easily politicized and sometimes even defended. Yet the role of politics is not to make citizens poor, but rather to make them prosperous. And we also know that the only way to stop corruption is to stand up and stop it. We still have too much government, a pervasive bureaucracy, and far too many business regulations and taxes. For as long as we believe that our problems should and can only be resolved by government, we will continue to create many more public institutions to consume the little revenue government generates, and then tax our citizens and the private sector to fund the unproductive bureaucracy. The purpose of government must be to benefit the public and not to justify the existence of government jobs. I've only attempted to explain why we selected the theme for this year, Ghana in Search of Prosperity. The journey has been long and may still be longer unless we make a conscious effort to make it shorter. To help us make it a shorter, safer journey will be our speakers, Dr. Paul Akwa, and it's in the order in which they will speak. Former Governor of the Bank of Ghana, Paul, if you can just bow for them to see who you are. And before then, the Deputy Director in the African Development Department, African Department of the International Monetary Fund. Professor Biripopulampu, Vice Chancellor, Central University. Mr. Kojo Adai-Mensah, CEO, Data Bank. Dr. Kwesi, I'm sure you have heard his voice many times on radio. Head and Director of Faculty of Academic Affairs and Research, Kofi Annan Peacekeeping Training Center, Accra. And Mr. Charles Boama, Senior Vice President of the Africa Development Bank. Their CVs have already been circulated, and therefore it only leaves me with the greatest pleasure to invite Dr. Paul Akwa to the podium. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you for, I think I should thank you for the very informative introductory remarks that you made. It is a great pleasure to participate in this roundtable on the theme of Ghana in Search of Prosperity. It is a theme that strikes at the very core of the legitimate aspiration of a people, and a very important theme for this forum, particularly after 70 years of independence. I thank the organizers, Ishmael Yamson Associates, for giving us the opportunity to grapple with this issue, this big question of the drivers of a nation's prosperity. I think I see in it a temptation to engage in a discussion and assessment of what and the degree of success we have achieved as a developing nation. I have chosen not to yield to that temptation. So I do not intend to enter today into a review of the history or a discussion of the extraordinary circumstances that determined the current level of the nation's prosperity as we see it. That would be a long story. But I think it should be of some practical interest, if not the history, to look at where we are at present on the global prosperity scale and how we might well have enhanced our national well-being. Therefore, I will devote some of my remarks to this issue. I will crave your indulgence to use the analytical analysis of the concept of competitiveness to extract some policy messages, raise some questions from the perspective of conditions in Ghana. On this point, ladies and gentlemen, I must say up front that I am persuaded that we have not fully used possibly the most powerful driver for sustained increases in prosperity and by extension reductions of poverty. That driver, I believe, is a policy emphasis embedded in some sort of a DNA in a culture that protects the prosperity that we have achieved and its foundations. A culture that insists on preserving the value of social and economic capital. I know that sounds somewhat pedantic, but I will come back to it later. Now to the main theme. While most of my discussion on competitiveness will be from the national perspective, it has also strong implications for the private sector enterprise. What is competitiveness? Competitiveness is an abstract concept with many dimensions, as is prosperity, which is indeed the benefit prosperity delivers to society. Competitiveness is defined at the national competitiveness at the level of the national economy and also at the enterprise level is very difficult to define exactly. It is not a single silver bullet driver of prosperity. I think the underlying logic of the concept is a connection between productivity, income growth, and standards of living. It conveys the fact that in some way, nations have long been in competition to create, in a race to create prosperity. But permit me to use a simple anecdote that brings out some meaning of competitiveness. Walking through a particular lane in the Makola market, one sees several ladies displaying the same item, tomatoes. It turns out that one of the ladies always manages to sell first all the tomatoes at her stand on every market day. How does he do it? She attracts customers by good demeanor, a pleasant smile, a bit of humor, an aggressive yet gentleness of approach. And that is she's truly being good at what she does to derive the best results. Being good at what she does to derive the best results. That makes her a winner and prosperous as well. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a display of competitiveness, albeit at a really nano micro level. Far away from the Makola market, in its global policy discussions, the World Bank uses the World Economic Forum, sorry, not the World Bank, or the African Development Bank, uses a commonly accepted definition that seeks to capture the multifaceted dimensions of competitiveness. And it defines competitiveness as the set of institutions, policies, and factors that determine the level of productivity of an economy, and which in turn sets the level of prosperity that the economy can achieve. That definition is grounded in theory and scholarly work on the experience of countries across the world. Firm or enterprise level competitiveness is intertwined with the national level competitiveness. That interdependence is well captured by another definition which describes a competitive economy as one in which institutional and macroeconomic conditions allow productive firms to thrive, and in turn, the development of these firms supports the expansion of employment, investment, and trade. You can infer from this that competitiveness is the result of a complex process and interaction of a lot of factors. And in fact, this definition is only a tip of a complex story. And that is a story about how nations seek to prosper or fail in the race to how countries seek to prosper or fail. And that story has a great deal to do with the nature of social and economic organization, institutions, and the norms, politics, policies, the role of technological change, resource endowment, and issues having to do with geography and cultural heritage, government and private sector behavior and the constraints on their policies, politics and policies create a web of factors that is difficult to disentangle to assess their possible influence on national competitiveness and the process of creating wealth and prosperity. So what constitutes the core foundations of a competitive economy then? It is the same factors that have been identified to explain why some countries are more successful and are further up than others on the income and prosperity scale globally. To answer this question, it will not come as a surprise that the quality of macroeconomic policies stands out as one of the critical drivers of competitiveness and therefore prosperity, especially in developing economies. Winners like Singapore, Norway, and Botswana have maintained strong macroeconomic stability over long periods of time. Healthy public finances rooted in principles of fiscal rectitude and transparency, prudent monetary policies, and a sound and robust functioning financial system serve as critical anchors for price and currency stability. It instills market confidence in policy-making authorities. Macro stability fosters access to credit and capital. It creates an attractive environment for doing business and promotes long-term savings and investment, including inflows of foreign direct investment. Importantly, the macroeconomic environment critically influences the competitive position of firms, their long-term expectations, initiative, enterprise, and the scope to create wealth, to create value and wealth. If you are not persuaded by this argument, you only have to listen to the loud noises and complaints at Makola when the CD is slipping. But as Mr. Yamson just said, macro stability is not enough. Equally important are factors that shape an economy's structural foundations, the so-called structural pillars of competitiveness. Those are the factors that underpin long-term growth and prosperity. And among these are the following. First, the strength and quality of institutions, most often captured under the title of governance. And this is not to be taken as simply the architectural edifices and size of the bureaucracy. It is the integrity and effectiveness with which the public sector delivers on institutional mandates pertaining to the rule of law, respect for contract and property rights, and freedom and personal freedom. It relates to the extent of fair enforcement and compliance with laws and regulations that are fair and not discriminatory. It is about trust in the judiciary, parliament, executive authority, and regulatory bodies, peace and security services, tax and customs administration, and it includes fair and transparent democratic elections, voice and representation. The second set of factors has to do with the quality of the physical and social infrastructure. This secures access to transport services, energy, water, electricity, education, and healthcare, which are very critical for growing the productive potential of the economy. I'm sure we all experience the quality of the infrastructure that are available here in Ghana. Another set includes the efficiency of markets for goods and services, the depth and sophistication of the financial system, capital markets, the quality of the payment system, the structure and organization of industry, corporate culture of firms, the availability of skilled workforce, and the friendliness or not of the business environment. All these factors define the strength and robustness of an economy, add technological readiness and innovation, access to information and communications technology, which shape the dynamics of productivity growth. Finally, add openness to the international trade, which is a source of advantage. For example, it provides access to markets and global value chains and information on new production processes and practices. Of course, all these together should include natural resource endowment and the capacity for effective and prudent management of such resources, crucially to avoid the resource curse. And then I should point out that, unfortunately, there are also very powerful killer factors that can curtail or outright destroy wealth and prosperity, notably corruption, inflation, currency stability, and policy uncertainty. But the worst and most vicious is conflict, or the threat of conflict, and political uncertainty, which sadly is a recurring problem on our continent. At this stage, it would be fair to say that building a competitive economy, that is, developing all its structural pillars, must be a complex process that should take time and perseverance. I certainly think it is. And clearly, it requires a coherent, well-organized system and a vehicle of the many mutually self-reinforcing factors that serve as drivers of competitiveness. As all the drivers are key, who should be responsible for the journey? The answer is the proverbial one: committed, visionary political leaders and captains of industry to steer the process, and hard-working passengers, the citizens, to insist on doing the right thing to keep moving steadily in the right direction on the road to greater prosperity. So, ladies and gentlemen, it will also be fair to raise the question of what is the relevance of all this in the present Ghanaian context. And that takes me back to the point I made about preserving the acquired level of prosperity as a matter of policy imperative. Looking at the experience, it is clear that our policy authorities have been making efforts to engage the key levers and drivers of national competitiveness. We have notably seen some success in democratic governance, and we continue to aspire to strengthen the acquired reputation, especially with regard to free and fair elections. But I think there are reasons to ponder that the current level of national prosperity, as we see it, is below the potential level that we have created with the efforts and investments we've made over time. Living conditions might very well be better if we paid sufficient attention to the little things and to getting value from the acquired stock of economic and social capital and heritage. Let me put this in the form of the following questions. Some practical question for you to ponder. What if we were operating with a sort of cultural DNA, which says, for example, keep everything in good working order. Keep the gutters and sewage lines clean. Repair the potholes on the road. Repair the traffic lights. Keep the trotro and every vehicle in good condition and not break down in traffic. Repair the leaking roof on the school building. Fix or replace the broken equipment in the hospital or clinic. What if we were to do 8 hours off work, not 8 hours at work a day? What if everyone were punctual and not kept African time? What if there were not the impunity of encroaching upon land and property, including even the land of the government? We have built up major infrastructure deficits that are large because of the decay of existing infrastructure. And we continue to spend and set ambitious infrastructure targets in our strategic development goals. The question is, what if, for example, the railway network were kept working and not allowed to fall into total disrepair, and feeder and rural roads were kept in good and not in poor state? And this is a great one. What if Ghana Airways had been kept profitable and flying the national colors? What if our democracy were not at a stage where we have to stay in prayer for peace in nervous anticipation of election results? Finally, that great counterfactual question on economic policy. What if there were no repeated fiscal surprises and excessive spending of the sort that has almost become a part of the electoral cycle and a source of recurring surges of inflation and currency crisis? What if there had been firmly entrenched principle of fiscal prudence as the norm? Who would want to hazard any answers to these questions or any guesses about the economic cost or benefit of doing or not doing all these little things right? I see that no one is prepared to answer. That would be very brave to do so. But what is certain is that the accumulation of neglect of small repairs and maintenance of social infrastructure and any small disregard for rules and regulations come with economic and social costs that are incalculable. It diminishes the level of prosperity that is attainable for present and future generations. Doing the basic things right and being good like the Makula market lady. And being good at doing things like the market lady. what we do is surely important and in a grand strategy for building competitiveness and creating wealth and national prosperity on an enduring basis. Let me repeat that. Doing the basic things right and being good at what we do is surely important in a grand strategy for building competitiveness and creating wealth and national prosperity on an enduring basis. And that is my conclusion. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Paul.
I think Dr. Polakwa deserves another round of applause.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Francis Aban. I'm the host of Morning Star on Star FM. Next to speak to us this morning is Professor Bill Pupulampu. But I just want to quickly mention that this roundtable discussion is live on Star 103.5 FM. Live tweets are also live now on Twitter. You can head to our Twitter page. It's at Star 1035 FM. You'll be able to see the real tweet in real time to follow the conversations. With a round of applause, let's now invite Professor Bill Pupulampu for our next conversation on leveraging the power and potential of Ghana's human capital to drive growth.
Mr. Chairman and Mr. Yamson and colleague delegates that are gathered here, good morning once again. I cannot but acknowledge that Dr. Akwa has really set the tone. So thank you very much. I'll resist the temptation of beginning my submission from where he left off. So thank you so very much. Mr. Yamson, I'm also grateful for the opportunity. Thank you. I'd like the gathering to know that I have been drawn into Mr. Yamson's circle like, a planet orbiting a sun, and you cannot but keep in that circle. So thank you very much. There's a lot to say about what we've got to say on human capital. And I shall try to be brief, but it's a matter that I could spend the whole day on. So I'll only ask Mr. Aka, please, or the moderator, please, if I'm overstepping my time, just prompt me, because I may not know that I'm. There is sufficient evidence that growth and societal transformation and organizational performance and the general uplift of the standards of living of countries are a direct consequence of deployed human capacity and availability of productive skills. These skills are the means by which natural resources are transformed to serve humanity and thereby build societies. It is, however, unclear the extent to which we appreciate the need to be strategic and to adopt far-sighted approach to the development of our human capacity in our country. I'm speaking on the leveraging of Ghana's human capital for growth. Chairman, I'm not sure we have asked ourselves some serious questions where this matter is concerned. So it is commendable that is on today's agenda. If we want to harness Ghana's human capital for growth, we must ask ourselves a number of questions. So, Dr. Akwa, I will also ask my questions. And here goes. How do we define growth? And what are the pillars and growth poles of our country? And who should drive and benefit from that growth? What are the competencies and capacities that are absolutely critical for that growth, so defined by ourselves? And how do we build those competencies? And what actions do we take which are inimical to the development of those competencies and capacities? And critically, how do we synergize these competencies? I believe that it is time that we answer those questions directly. If the logic is to be accepted, that human skills properly deployed facilitate social and economic development, then Ghana's search for prosperity, that is consistent, sustained, and distributed prosperity, is directly related to the attention we pay or don't pay to developing our human capital. So, what is human capital? As far back as in 1776, Adam Smith, in his huge tomes, volumes, I think book 1, 2, and 3, or 4, an inquiry into the nature and causes of the wealth of nations. In book 2, he identified 4 types of fixed capital, which impact or afford the possibility of machines and implements used for one's vocation, buildings, land and associated natural enhancements, and then human capital. And he defined human capital as the acquired and useful abilities of all the inhabitants or members of society. These abilities are secured through education, study, and apprenticeship, and are domiciled in the person. And this is important. They are domiciled in the person, and they constitute a fortune, asset, or stock for both the individual and the society in which he or she belongs. What is striking here is that 242 years ago, Smith clearly postulated what the stock of skills and human and knowledge are required for growth. Since his concepts, the idea of human capital has featured much in human resource development, economics of labor, strategic human resource management, and related literatures. And the definitions really have not changed much since those days. Economists today have turned to Smith's positions more forcefully and conclude that in a country you have natural capital, you have produced capital, and you have intangible capital. The intangible capital is exactly the stock of labor, capacity, population's knowledge and skills, trust, level of trust in society, and the quality of its formal and informal institutions. This is human capital. A World Bank study places the following percentages on how each of these 3 contribute to wealth and prosperity. Natural capital accounts, I wish I was in the classroom, Mr. Chairman, so that I will pose the question. Well, I will pose it anyway. Can anybody guess how much natural capital accounts for? And can anybody guess how much the produced capital accounts for? And can anybody guess how much the intangible capital accounts for? I shouldn't pause for an answer, should I? Natural capital accounts for 5%. That is our gold, our oil, 5%. Our cocoa, 5%. Produced capital accounts for 18%. You know the rest. The intangible capital, that is our skills, our trust in society, credibility of our institutions, accounts for 77% of created wealth. So, need we ask where the debate should start? What are our knowledge, skills, attitudes, values, capacities which will drive our forward growth? Let me touch then briefly on the matter of a national policy on human capital to drive growth and prosperity. What is our national policy on human capital? What are the competencies and values that we must build to grow? What are the tools and what are the agencies that we'll use to facilitate same? I am an academic. I've been in the business for a little while. And as it were, I now head one of the private universities, the largest as it were. And I am not sure. I cannot put hand on heart and say, this is our national human capital policy position. So let me attempt to state what must be. In doing so, I am instructed by some clear statements that our current President, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, has made, and some policy directions that have been made. These are: 1, free tuition for senior high school enrollment; 2, conversion of polytechnics to technical universities. And on this particular matter, I have to state that the current minister in charge was my former boss twice over. And therefore, when I want to say anything about the matter of conversion of polytechnics to technical universities, I will hesitate, because he was my boss at the University of Ghana, my boss at Central University. He left the job and I took over, and is now still my boss as Minister of State for Higher Education. So I have to be careful what I say. And then 1 district, 1 factory. But of course, he knows what my mind is anyway. But 1 district, 1 factory. And then, in recent times, the President has made the point, Ghana beyond aid. Now, these points are very much in my mind as I give you my thoughts in regards to human capital, leveraging our human capital for prosperity. Policy issue number 1. I believe it is important that we define growth and specify what the growth pillars and identify what the growth poles are in our country. Now, is our growth defined in terms of growth percentages? High table, and in this room are many economists and finance people. For them, the matter is percentage. 6% growth, 8% growth. Well, Mr. Chairman, this is what we, the psychologists, call the tyranny of the economist. Let us decompose that percentage into tangible matters. 1, how do we do business? 2, how many SMEs survive beyond 5 years? 3, how many B class and C class roads are fixed within a certain period? And you alluded to that, Dr. Akwa. How many communities have potable tap-borne water delivered regularly? And how many graduates gain employment within a specified time when they leave school? Perhaps there may be someone in the audience who may be thinking rather loudly that, well, yeah, that is embedded in the 6%. But how many times do you see that articulated in the newspaper or wherever else when the 6% or 8% is mentioned? Now, when we define growth in such specific terms, what it will do is force us to take a step back. So we inquire amongst ourselves, what exactly do we need to do in terms of our capacities and our abilities and our behaviors to sustain those specific aspects of growth? Policy issue number 2, what competencies will get us there? For this, I turn to the President's position on Ghana beyond aid. What behaviors will get us to beyond aid? A recent newspaper article suggests that we spend safer 56 billion on tomato imports from Burkina Faso. Tomatoes, 56 billion, Burkina Faso. I come from Adan, down the road. For several years while I was driving in my father's car down that road, and then my father passing and I driving myself down that road, tomatoes abound. From Dawa to Kase Junction, tomatoes abound, rotting away in the process. And today, watermelons have taken over the tomatoes. Now, what capacities do we need to develop to ensure that the tomatoes or the watermelons remain and are enhanced in terms of wealth generation for the people of that area? Would it not make sense to see that area as a growth pole for 1D, 1F? But what will sustain it beyond the presidential push? The answer lies in some competencies within that area. Ghana beyond aid, Mr. Chairman, is a matter of behaviors and capacities. Policy issue number 3. We need to link growth poles to specified competencies. Point made. Policy issue number 4. How do we develop or build the knowledge, skills, and competencies and the values that are required? And this is where the matter of technical universities and free SHS comes in. As we speak, the data available suggests that the entire higher education space has a total enrollment of about 450,000 students. And this is for the 10 public universities, the 5 chartered private universities, the over 100 private university colleges, the 8 technical universities, the 41 colleges of education, the 17 nursing training colleges, and a few others, and the number carries on, for a nation of 26 million. At the present time, our regime for interlinking what all these institutions do is unclear. As we speak, there are at least 40 pending new institutional accreditations awaiting Ghana's National Accreditation Board. Ladies and gentlemen, why? And to what end? Our higher education system must be locked into a specified and defined competence development agenda. And we must be ruthless about this. We are running a near free-for-all situation with regards to accreditations. This must stop. It is so flawed. Let me explain by using 1 or 2 country examples. Again, several years ago, over 100 years ago, 1862-63, the Moral Act of the United States passed an act for the donation of public lands towards the intent that agriculture and the mechanical arts will be embedded and entrenched in the United States. The result was 69 higher education colleges and universities, including today's Cornell, MIT, University of Wisconsin and Madison, and others. They were dedicated to ensure that that country will be food sufficient and self-sufficient in the mechanical arts, so defined at that time. 1978-79, Singapore decided that within 15 years it should become a financial hub. What it did was to identify the competencies required and send its people to train in New York, London, and Zurich. For many years, culminating in the 1990s, Costa Rica decided that it needed a mix of high-end technical skills to attract FDI. It went into partnership with some groups. Today, they reap the benefits of the same. In Sweden, the state mandates higher education institutions to produce a certain number of PhDs every year. I would argue, therefore, that Ghana needs to articulate for itself the intangible content required and to decide how we will do it. Since we struck oil, many higher education institutions have begun running programs in, Mr. Chairman, in oil and gas law. My colleagues across the table at the University of Ghana are there, and it's just because I've seen you guys over there, so I'm just... But I ask the question, do we need competence and capacity in oil and gas law at this time? Many advocates of the involvement of indigents in the extractive industries know that many times the problem is because indigenes do not have the technical, lower level technical skills required to be part of the process. Over space and time, what it produces is disaffection, anger, and social discontent. I recently visited 3 provinces in China. I learned that the influx of Chinese galamsey to Ghana are from one particular district where they have specialized in small-scale mining. And they've realized that there are things out there are running out, and so GH is the next step to go. I learned that their technical colleges don't bother with humanities training. They rather focus on mid to lower level technical skills, and the technical colleges appear to be attached to major industrial production facilities. I learned that the state indicates very clearly to each institution what the country needs, and therefore over the next 20 years, what types of skills to produce. Is it any wonder that they're taking the world by storm? Policy issue number 5, the place of values, behaviors, and institutional structures. Mr. Chairman, I mentioned Adam Smith's position, and those of us in the softer human sciences note that trust, credibility, institutional capacity, belief in ourselves are fundamental. In another life, I'm dealing with a bank, and we need to address the matter of the lack of trust and the lack of consistency and acceptance that when I take a loan, I've got to pay it back. You see, for human capital to facilitate growth, it must release certain types of behaviors. So we are not only talking about education, no. Behavior governs how we treat ourselves. What I mean is that while we consider skills, we must also note that this human psyche and how it relates to itself and to the fellow man are important. So the construction engineer or the civil engineer who happily drives on the road shoulder after all his or her degrees is just as ignorant as a villager who has never seen a slide rule. Did I say slide rule? So you know how far back I go. Mr. Chairman, I want to make some concluding remarks because I think my blood is beginning, and if I don't stop myself, I will carry on. Mr. Chairman, Ghana needs to mainstream a human capital policy framework developed, I submit, by a committee of experts who have the primary remit to engage government, industry, and academia in a discussion of what skills, knowledge, and values are required in a 15 to 30-year iteration, and to charge universities and polytechnics to engage in a focused interrogation of those skills and to prevent accreditations that don't sit within those skill sets. The committee of experts should commission and use research findings from our national agenda, pillars and poles. The committee of experts should feed all of this to government. And I insist, free-for-all accreditations and entries into the market for all sorts of strange programs need to end. Mr. Chairman, we can't produce wealth. We can't harness our skills, and we can certainly synergize for wealth creation and prosperity. But we have to be very directed, deliberate, and intentional about it. The African Union has Agenda 2063. It is called the Africa We Want. I am calling for Human Capital Agenda 2048, the Ghana we want, driven by a set of values, attributes, skills, and institutional arrangements which will facilitate for us sustained, consistent, and distributed wealth for our country. Thank you for your attention.
I think he deserves a bigger applause.
Okay, Prof, that was absolutely brilliant. Well done. Greatly inspiring. Okay, we're going to go to the next speaker, Mr. Kojo Adai-Mensah, to talk about social mobility and stability as critical vehicles for expanding opportunities.
I'll need this.
You would need this. Yes, you can have it. Just that.
It's a take.
Oh. So let me just be sure it's moving. I need help here. Okay. Yeah, it's working. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I just hope technology doesn't disappoint me. So, for me, this is the second time I've actually, Mr. Chairman, had the honor of speaking at the Ishmael Yamson and Associates Roundtable. And I just hope that we all don't leave here and business is as usual. I would pray that we all leave here today and take just one action. We tell ourselves we will do one thing, just one, that will change Ghana, not ourselves. This is not about being selfish. This is about the country. So for me, I don't want this platform, as Mr. Chairman said, he has created a platform, yes, but it shouldn't end with the discussion. We should just go back and promise ourselves we'll do one thing. So I'll share a few thoughts with you here. And I did a bit of work around this, defining what social mobility really is about. And I was surprised to find out that there are actually two types of social mobility. So there's the intra-generational, and there's the intergenerational. So the intra-generational is about moving from one class to the other. So maybe you are born in Wasa in a low-income family, and you must then move to a middle-income family. Or you must move into middle-income status. Or you are born into middle income, you must move into high-income status. That is intra-generational. Now, inter is now about the self. So you are born as the daughter of a peasant farmer. And then you, through education, and when I talk about education, I always talk about quality education, you become, say, a doctor. I'm not belittling any other profession or a teacher. My father is a teacher, so I'm not belittling any profession. But this is what the literature talks about. And I'm going to try and discuss how we can let this happen in our country. Because I don't think we are achieving this anymore. And I will always use my dad as an example. Because I don't think today, if you are born somewhere in Takwa or in Benin and you attend Takwa Methodist, I doubt it that you ever become Vice Chancellor of University of Ghana. I doubt it. And that for me is a big problem. And we must find a way to resolve it. So there are a few definitions. I mean, when Michael and I were preparing for this roundtable, he was trying to focus on millennials. But I think all these generations are also still very, very relevant and important. They are the matured generation. I don't know if there are any in this room. I'm sure there are, Mr. Chairman. There's the baby boomers as well. There's the baby boomers as well, born 46 to 64 thereabouts. I belong to Generation X, right there, and I'm sure majority of us in the room belong to Generation X. And then you have the millennials, 81, 2000, and now we have the I generation, post 2001. Our kids are becoming I generation. They're born with iPhones in their hands and they're just punching the thing away, you know. So these are the different generations that we have, but we still need to look at all of these generations having to have social mobility. I don't think this is only about the millennials. Okay, now this is my personal definition, or what I think has to happen for people to move through the social ladder of society. And Mr. Chairman mentioned some, Dr. Aqua mentioned some, Prof also mentioned some. If I mention it, then, and the consistency should tell us that it is really what we need to do, and it is really what we need to tackle. Education for me is a passionate subject that I can't stop also talking about. Technology is another. And social amenities, as Dr. Akwa was saying, you know, roads, rail, you know, water, everything, electricity, power. And I'll dwell on those three a bit. Okay. Unfortunately, this is not coming out as clear as my fellow panelists will see it over here. It's very, very clear there. But that's a school in Ambraya in the northern region. It's a Muslim school. And the floor that you see is sand. It is sand. It's not even sandcrete. It's normal sand. Fortunately, the board is a white board though. Though in my school, my adopted school in Abetifi, they are still using chalk and blackboard. In the 21st century, where millennials in Accra are using, I'll throw another slide up there. How do these students in Ambraya move through the social ladder when this is the sort of education we are going to give to them? It's impossible. And most of the time when we talk about education, we just think about tertiary education, university. No, quality education starts from primary school. That's where the fundamentals are imbibed in us. If we get it wrong there, and even get it wrong at SHS, that by the time they are coming into the university, no doubt we struggle to get people to employ. What skills are we giving to them? If this is the kind of education we are going to give to our kids, it's not going to happen. Because I know for the older generations, the playing field was quite level. So you could move from Abrodunkwa or Ambraya or somewhere and end up in Achimota or in Fanspem or St. Peter's, anywhere you could. Today is not happening. And you know what? We are creating a generation of armed robbers. That's what we are doing. If we don't take this educational matter seriously and pull it out of the realm of politics, we will create not a millennial generation, we will create a generation of armed robbers, and they will come attacking our kids who are in the GISs and the Christ the Kings and all whatnot. That's what's going to happen. Or they will fly away and leave Ghana as it is. Where are we going? Where are we really going? Now, for those of you here, the picture on your left, and for my fellow panelists, the picture also on your left. You remember the story of the man who drew the computer and Microsoft stepped in? You remember? That is the story. In Saiguru or somewhere up in the northern region. And to the right is a school in the Philippines. I'm talking technology here. The school in the Philippines, the kids there are using e-readers. Even in Ghana, we are not using e-readers in the top schools. E-readers against chalk and blackboard as the technology to describe a computer. How? They come out and what? How can they compete globally? It's impossible. And yet we say the world is now a global village. So are we part of the world at all? I mean, really, it's not a joke. And if there are any politicians in this room, I know that it is driven first by politics, but I'll talk about corporates and individuals as well. We all have to play a part to fix this issue. There is no way the children on the left can compete. And this is Philippines. This is not even Singapore or Malaysia or Finland. Are you aware in Finland there are no private schools? They are all public schools. You move from one school to the other, the standard is the same and it's world class. Why can't we be like that? Why? Why do we have to have a proliferation of applications sitting at the National Accreditation Board, everybody trying to get accreditation? And you know what? To do humanities. All the courses are humanities. In Accra Technical University, there are more humanities students than technology students. I was guest speaker there 3 weeks ago, so I know. How can a technical university have more non-technical students than technical students? We are lost completely. We need to fix this issue. Technology, don't fail me. Thank you. Then the social amenities. This is a railway line through Enyinem. It's a railway line through Enyinem. So if Dr. Paul Akwa comes to sit here, a former governor, and I'm honored to be on the same platform with him, and he says railway and I say railway, Charlie, then railway. My dad used a railway line from Takwa to Achimota School Junction. True or false? In 19, I don't know what it will be, 50 something. 50 something in a sleeper to Achimota School Junction. Some of you don't even know there was a railway line there. So are we going back or are we moving forward? What's going on in Ghana? What is going on here? There's a message on the screen. I don't know what it's telling me. But this is a railway line at Enyinem. How do we create social mobility for our citizens when we don't have the proper social amenities, the infrastructure to enable them access what they need to access? A railway line to move from point A to point B. The other day I heard that the traffic from Malam to Kaswa alone took 5 hours. You sit in a car, burn fuel, and you are unproductive for 5 hours. Where are you going? You are not moving anywhere in the social ladder. You stay where you are. We don't have water. People are getting bilharzia still in 21st century Ghana. As for power, you know, we've gone through Doomso and all that. I can't overemphasize power. Just basic infrastructure to enable us access what we need to access to move up. We've got to do something about this. Sorry. Okay, so what do we have to do? I'm taking this on 3 levels. First is government. As for government, nobody can take that away. Government, definitely. They must stop paying lip service, and I'm not doing MPP NDC here. I'm talking about the government of Ghana. We should stop paying lip service to our infrastructure needs and do it. And stop politicizing it and stop doing all the corruption around it. And we must decentralize this local government system properly. Not just, you know, the decentralization. Are you aware some people get their district assembly common fund and use it for funerals? How many of you are aware? They use it for funerals. They go to the district assembly meeting and they have to decide what the priority is for the money, and they will vote for the funeral for that big man. and spend the money on the funeral. Hey, yo. I mean, what is that? So there should be a tweak on how the common fund should be used. I agree to that one. They cannot just be left free to do whatever. There have to be specific infrastructure projects that the money must be used for, to allow or give the people of that town a chance to move from one level in the social ladder to the next. That is how we must do it. And then the equal opportunity for every Ghanaian child. And I always think about public school. And I will not stop using people like my dad and Osafo Mafu, because I've listened to their story, and I'm sure Dr. Yamson as well. I think you and my dad were in Takwa at some point. Exactly. There was no way, or today, there's no way he would have become chairman of Unilever. No way. Because we are not giving equal opportunity. We have to level the playing field to some extent. It's too wide. And government has to drive that agenda. It's not just about throwing money to teacher training and say you've paid free teacher training. It's not that alone. You've got to do more than that. And for me, it's from the primary level, because that is where the fundamentals are. If they can't learn how to construct a proper sentence in English at that point, they'll come and buy in the university. Then corporates. The first point says, run your business so you can expand and create jobs. Now, who has heard of Asankoma's rant on Wache Nwasa? Nana, you like Wache, I know. Have you heard it? So Ace joins a Wache queue on a Saturday morning. He's in the queue, and he says, just when he's number 20 in the queue, the woman just triumphantly announces, Wache Nwasa. So, what? You know, at the Pameton, me Wache Nwasa. So she's proud that her Wache is finished and there are still people in the queue. Forgetting that she's rather lost 30 more people she could have been selling to expand the business. Meanwhile, just down the line, Papaya is opening branches. And then we say the Lebanese there, they come here and they take our money. When we are doing Wache one bowl, when we can expand it to 3 bowls, create jobs, and allow people to move through the social ladder. We want to stay down there, no, one bowl Wache person. Every day we get 20 cedis, fine. Why? If we don't change our mentality as business people to grow, expand, become bigger than what we are, this thing about social is not going to happen. We've got to change the mindset as business leaders. Please don't go back to the office and be proud that Wache Nwasa. And then I'll dovetail the 2 next points. Creating opportunities for business to grow using your core strength. So I'm talking up to you. You see, we always think that it's about government. It's about government. It's not only about government. We also, you can go back, sit down, look at what you already do in your day-to-day business and figure out, how do I still, even within the tough environment in which we are, create opportunities? So at Data Bank, what did we do? Our financial literacy program, we brought it back full blast. My competitors think it's cost, because you don't always see the direct benefit. When you go out there, you set up maybe a big room like this, and then you try and teach people about investment and what it means, and it's hard work. And it doesn't bring immediate result. That's true. You know, commercial banking has been in Ghana for over 200 years. We haven't even penetrated 30%. How much more those of us in investment banking? Even Data Bank is older than the GSC, Mr. Amar, sorry. It's such a young industry. And I'm sure there are people in this room who don't even understand investment banking, and you are the cream de la cream of Ghana's society. How much more I open a branch in Ho and I have to go and sit there, or I'm in Tamale and have to go and educate. It's tough, but I've decided we'll do it. Because if we don't educate, we can't help the people. And then you create partnerships. So we have partnerships with different institutions to be able to reach out more and more. It's not impossible. If you put your mind to it, you can actually make it. So corporate Ghana, don't sit back and just think that to help us achieve prosperity, it is only government's role. It's not. You have a part to play. Please do it. Then we as individuals, and I say social mobility has to be intergenerational. So what we are trying to say is each generation must do better than the previous generation. You must do better than your parents, though I failed on that. But still, I'm working hard at it. You must do better than your parents. Your children must do better than you. So you have to create the environment for your children to be able to do better than you. Please stop shutting your kids up. It's archaic. Our parents did it to us. We should not allow ourselves to do it to our kids. Allow them to question you. Allow them to be inquisitive. Allow them to explore whatever it is they want to explore. Don't be afraid. It's the only way they can learn. So and then what you are doing for you yourself. I'll just give an example there. I mean, in Ghana, we just accept mediocrity too much. Oh, it's okay. In Ghana, there's it's not. You cannot accept mediocrity. Otherwise, we will go, because it is the individual parts that make up the whole. If we all decide that we will not accept mediocrity and strive for excellence, we'll move somewhere. You take initiative, you look out for solutions. Entrepreneurs look out for solutions. There's a BBC documentary I was listening to about these guys who had finished school, degree, no job. They will be stuck down there. They took initiative. You know what they started doing? They started selling their own used clothes. That's how they started. So no capital. We sit back and say, I don't have capital. But they started by selling their own clothes as used clothes. Now their friends who were sitting in the banks in the air condition come to them to buy clothes. They've moved up the social ladder way ahead of what their mates are doing, and they are sitting in banks feeling that they are cool. Think about it and take an initiative. And then what you do for others. I'm not a fan of giving handouts just for giving sake. Don't do it that way. When you're helping, try and help in a sustainable manner. Like the coconut seller who went to ask for for some help. And the guy he asked told him, okay, you know what? I'm not going to give you the money. I'm going to try and set you up as a coconut seller. Okay? And then when you sell, use the profit to expand. I'll be monitoring. And slowly, the guy, I think he has about, I don't know what the figure is, but probably 10 or 15 wheelbarrows scattered around the city selling coconuts. One fine day, I hope he will have a full shop with machines that automatically remove the coconut husk so that he can create jobs and move some people up the social ladder. Finally, Doc, I would like to borrow that part of your speech that talks about corruption. But it is eating our society, guys. It is eating our society, and that's what's killing this country. And when we talk about corruption, everybody looks at the public sector. We all look at public workers. We are looking at passport office, DVLA, national identification. Those are the places we are looking at. Well, there's anecdotal evidence to suggest that those of us here from private sector, we are more corrupt than the public sector officials. Private sector corruption seems to be bigger than public sector. It's just that it doesn't come out. It doesn't get reported. So if you are sitting in this room and you are helping corrupt officials, you are not helping this country. Let's start stamping out corruption from the private sector. You leave the public sector people to do what they are doing. We are bigger than them, and we have more impact than them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kojo. Thank you, Prof. Popolampo. Thank you, Dr. Paulakwa. I do believe that we have had 3 very thought-provoking presentations, and we're craving for more, and you will have more, but after a short 15-minute tea break. But before we rise, please let us show our appreciation with another round of applause for our first 3 speakers. The tea break is in Damba Room, on my right when you exit the main doors, and we'll see you back here in 15 minutes. Thank you very much.